Former Colton resident Jim Messina is primarily known for his membership in such groups as Buffalo Springfield, Poco, and Loggins and Messina. But his musical career began right here in the Inland Empire. Messina's first musical influence was his father, Joe Messina. Jim says of his dad, "My father was a musician, a great player, much better than I am, and I was so inspired watching him play that I just had to do that." The second big musical influence on Jim Messina was surf guitar legend Dick Dale and his Fender Stratocaster guitar. Messina saw a number of Dick Dale's Inland Empire concerts in the early 1960s and walked away mesmerized. It was the overwhelming sound produced by Dale's Fender Stratocaster guitar and Fender amplifier setup that impressed the young musician. Messina reminisced about those days, saying, "I'd go to Dick Dale concerts and watch him play, and he was really the first one who had the machine gun sounding guitar, and I had to have one." So it was to Messina's great disappointment that when his mother bought him his first electric guitar, it was a Gretsch solid-body guitar with 2 pickups and not a Fender Strat. One day Messina was in an LA pawn shop and he saw a beat-up Stratocaster on display. The pawn shop dealer offered the Strat to Messina if he would trade in his Gretsch and throw in an extra $100. Messina accepted the deal and took his guitar home. Feeling bad that he traded in a new guitar for a beat-up Stratocaster, he decided he had to clean it up before showing it to his mother. So the first thing he did was to get a new paint job. Having no other choice, he took the guitar to a local Earl Scheib dealer and asked them if they would paint it. They told him they could do it for the regular price of painting a car. And so for $29.95, they painted the guitar a shiny pearlescent white, just like Dick Dale's guitar. Messina was now ready to conquer the music world. The Messina family moved to Colton in 1962, and that summer he formed his first Inland Empire band, the Boutonnieres. This band's first regular gig was at the pool house of the Grand Terrace Country Club, where the parents sipped martinis while the Boutonnieres played for free Shirley Temples. This band eventually evolved into the Pendletons, seen here performing at a Catholic youth organization Christmas dance in the parish hall of the Immaculate Conception Church in Colton. There was some discord in this band, so some of the members split to form the Hysterics, and Messina assembled his third Colton band, the Jesters. The band became regulars on the local CYO high school dance Battle of the Bands circuit. Here are a number of photos taken while Jim Messina and his Jesters played Colton High School dances in the school's ancient Macintosh gymnasium. As you might expect, the gym's acoustics were horrific, but the dancers didn't seem to mind. When the students danced on the gym floor, they had to remove their street shoes so as not to scratch up the basketball floor. So it literally was a sock hop. The All-Stars were a one-time supergroup made up of Colton High School rock musicians. Jim Messina and 2 of his Jesters were members of this band when they played a school talent assembly. In March 1964, the band signed up for a play-a-thon concert at Pacific Ocean Park in Santa Monica. The point was to play a marathon concert and attempt to break a record for consecutive hours playing. 3 to 5 of the Jesters played in shifts, while the others averaged 4 hours of sleep. The biggest danger to the band was when an 80-mile-per-hour ocean gust blew down the bandstand. No one was injured, and the contest continued. The Jesters eventually played for 100 consecutive hours, and it was declared that they had set a new record. The band's next achievement was an album that was released in 1964, The Dragster. It appeared on the Audio Fidelity label. The recording of this LP led to Jim Messina making some important connections that were to serve him well in the future. Meanwhile, Jim Messina graduated from Colton High School in June 1965, and he was now able to concentrate full-time on his music career. Part 2 of the Jim Messina story discusses his escape from Colton and into the LA music scene of the 60s and 70s. In June of 1965, Inland Empire musician Jim Messina was about to graduate from Colton High School and enter the next phase of his music career. But he had been laying the groundwork for his move to the 1960s LA music scene for years. His most successful Inland Empire group, the Jesters, had built up a local reputation and found itself in a position to release an album. The Dragsters was released in late 1964 on the small Audio Fidelity label. During its recording, Messina made some important connections that, in the future, would allow him to get his foot in the door of the music business. After he graduated from Colton High, he dissolved the group, quit performing, and decided to educate himself in the technical aspects of the recording industry. He began working with Ibis Records that did their sessions at Emperor Studios. It was there that he met recording engineer Mike Doro and began an apprenticeship with him to learn about sound engineering. Doro eventually introduced Messina to people at the iconic Sunset Sound Recorder Studios, where he was eventually hired as a mixing engineer. He was still a teenager. In 1966, Messina's work at Sunset Sound would lead to him being asked to engineer Buffalo Springfield's second LP. The group, with lead singers Stephen Stills, Richie Furay, and Neil Young, was eager to build upon the momentum initiated by their first album. On the back cover of the album, over 85 musical luminaries were thanked by the band. Among those acknowledged was Jim Messina, recognized for his contribution to the recording of the LP. When Jim Messina was asked about how he met Buffalo Springfield, he said, "Neil was the first one of the group that I met. He came into Sunset Sound one day, booked some time, and listened to what I was doing. Evidently, he wanted to work with somebody his own age. A few days later, I met Stephen, Richie, and the rest of the guys. I didn't contribute as to what their musical ideas would be, but I was their technical advisor at their request as to how a particular thing should be done." Upon release, the album produced 3 singles that cracked the Billboard Hot 100 chart. However, by mid-1967, the members of Buffalo Springfield seemed to be headed in different directions, lacking cohesion and headed towards a breakup. Messina was once again asked to engineer the sessions for the band's third album. Eventually, Atlantic Records chief Ahmet Ertegun and the band asked him to take over as producer. In January 1968, band bass player Bruce Palmer was deported to Canada after being charged with drug possession for the second time, adding further drama to the Buffalo Springfield saga. Jim Messina was in the right place at the right time, and the group asked him to join the band and take over on bass from Palmer. He joined even though he was in the difficult position of producing the band's third and final album. Messina had to piece together an LP from leftover 1967 studio sessions. He was only 20 years old. But before Messina could devote his full time to the LP, there were tour obligations to fulfill. In early 1968, the band was on the road for most of February. They took a bit of a break in March, then spent all of April on tour with the Beach Boys and the Strawberry Alarm Clock. Having decided to break up the band, Buffalo Springfield played a farewell concert at the Long Beach Arena on May 5, 1968. With the band's touring days coming to an end, Messina could now devote his full time to producing their third and final album, Last Time Around, which was released in July 1968. While the album did not produce any hit singles, Jim Messina managed to produce the Buffalo Springfield record that turned out to be their highest-ranking LP on the Billboard album chart. With the end of Buffalo Springfield, drummer Dewey Martin took a group on the road called the New Buffalo Springfield, until Young and Stills took legal action to prevent him from using the Springfield name. Stephen Stills teamed up with David Crosby and Graham Nash to form Crosby, Stills and Nash. Neil Young departed to begin a solo career. This left Jim Messina and Richie Furay, who decided to collaborate on their next music project. The next part documents Jim Messina's journey from Springfield to superstardom. In Part 2, Colton's Jim Messina had just been asked to join Buffalo Springfield in its waning days. Despite his short time in the band, Messina managed to become a part of a rock and roll tradition, the drug bust. In late March 1968, Messina and the rest of Buffalo Springfield attended a house jam session in Topanga Canyon. Also attending the get-together was Eric Clapton, then a member of the band Cream. According to an attendee, They were partying. The Marshall amps were stacked. Clapton and Stephen were playing so loud, the mountains were ringing. One of the neighbors didn't think it was so cool. Neighbors called the police, and they arrived to break up the party. In addition to loud music, the officers found 6 ounces of marijuana. Eric Clapton and Buffalo Springfield members Neil Young, Jim Messina, and Richie Furay were arrested. The other Springfield members, Stephen Stills and Dewey Martin, escaped the bust by leaving before the police arrived. All the jailed musicians were only found guilty of disturbing the peace. On May 5th, Buffalo Springfield played its farewell concert in Long Beach and were no more. Summer 1968, Jim Messina and Richie Furay formed a country rock group. They named it Pogo after the comic strip, at least until cartoonist Walt Kelly objected and threatened to sue. The name of the band was changed to Poco. Poco did the usual runs of LA nightclubs, showcases, and was eventually signed to Epic Records, where Richie Furay already had a solo contract. Jim Messina appeared on and produced Poco's first 3 albums. Between the second and third albums, Messina informed Furay that he was leaving the group. Musical differences between the two was the given reason. Messina returned to his roots of studio engineering and production. He signed a contract with Columbia Records as an independent producer. His first assignment was to work with a young singer by the name of Kenny Loggins. Messina rehearsed with Loggins, recorded demos, and assembled a band for him. When Messina thought Loggins was ready, production began on his debut album for Columbia Records. It was decided that Messina should attach his name to the project so there would be some name recognition from those already familiar with Messina's past work. The album was titled Kenny Loggins with Jim Messina Sittin' In. This teaming was only to last for 1 album, just long enough to give a boost to Loggins' career. The album, when released in November 1971, was so successful that the pair decided to continue the partnership, calling themselves Loggins and Messina. Loggins and Messina made their Inland Empire debut on May 14, 1972, at the UC Riverside Gym. A pre-concert article by Henry Mendoza appeared in the May 11, 1972 San Bernardino Sun newspaper. It reported that this was Messina's homecoming to the IE. Mendoza, like Messina, was a graduate of Colton High School. In July 1972, Loggins and Messina appeared on Dick Clark's American Bandstand TV program. On December 14, 1973, the duo recorded a segment for the Midnight Special TV series. 2 days later, on December 16th, Loggins and Messina appeared at the Swing Auditorium in San Bernardino. In 1975, a ghost from Jim Messina's past resurfaced. Thimble Records acquired the rights to The Dragster by the Jesters and re-released it, hoping to capitalize on the popularity of Loggins and Messina. The pair eventually released 6 studio LPs in the 1970s. 3 earned platinum records and 2 earned gold records. Also released in the 1970s were 2 live albums and 1 best-of album. In 1976, the pair announced that they were calling it quits to pursue solo careers. Reportedly, Loggins had grown weary of what he perceived to be his student-teacher relationship with Messina. In the 1970s and the early 1980s, Jim Messina released 3 solo LPs. In the late 1980s, Messina and the original members of Poco regrouped and recorded a new release called Legacy. The album earned Poco only its 2nd gold album of its career. They then embarked on a reunion tour. After the tour, the band and Messina again went their separate ways. Over the years, Messina and Poco have occasionally regrouped, including a well-received 2009 set at the Stagecoach Festival in Coachella. Meanwhile, almost 3 decades after their breakup, Loggins and Messina decided to team up again in 2004 for a reunion tour. In 2005, a DVD and CD were released to commemorate the tour. The duo also toured in 2009. Messina has kept a connection with his Inland Empire past. He's seen here with former Jester and fellow motorcycle enthusiast Ron House. In 1985, Messina and House attended the Colton High School class of 1965 20th reunion at the Rancho Verde Club in Rialto. Today, Jim Messina is based in Santa Barbara and is still touring as a solo act, performing songs from his days in Buffalo Springfield, Poco, Loggins and Messina, and his solo days.